Hi guys, in this video we're gonna go over chapter 8 questions on your chapter 8 quiz questions. Okay, all right. So first question here. I think all this question have the same graph on it. So vertical distance between point A and B representing the tax for the market. So between A and B, this is our tax. Terrible handwriting. You know what? I should just hire somebody to write this stuff for me. Tax and right here, so if you remember from chapter 6, it's $32, that is the price for buyer. It's $16, that's the price for seller. And then if you remember what you learned from chapter 8, the triangle on top, so this is your consumer surplus. Triangle below, that's your producer surplus. And then this little triangle here, that is our deadweight loss. And then your total surplus, let me use different color. Your total surplus will be consumer surplus plus your tax revenue plus producer surplus. So this area here in blue, that is our total surplus. All right, so let's see what the question is asking for. So suppose the 20th unit sold by a seller to a buyer, which our following statement is correct. All right, so looking for the 20th unit. So for the 20th unit, let me just erase this. This is in the way. Okay. All right, so for the 20th unit, which would be right here, this is the 20th unit. Now if you go up, it's supposed to be a straight line. You see right here, so about like what, $28, that looks like how much the buyer is willing to pay. So this is a buyer's WTP. And then at about $20, this is looks like the seller's cost. All right, so suppose there is no tax. With no tax, when the market price is allowed to adjust at equilibrium, then this transaction will be good, because buyers want to pay more than the price, and then seller's cost is below the price, so they make a profit as well. So everybody's better off. But if you have a tax, now with a tax, this will increase how much buyer pays, so increase the price to $32, and then it will decrease how much price seller receive. So for our buyer here, he wouldn't buy anymore because his willingness to pay will be below the $32. Too expensive, he wouldn't buy. And then for the sellers, seller wouldn't want to sell anymore because for seller's cost will be more than the $16 the seller will be receiving from this transaction with a tax. So buyer wouldn't buy and seller wouldn't sell, and that's why this area here is represented by the area called deadweight loss, right? So this is inefficiency. All right, so let's go over our question. So first, for the 20th unit, the difference between buyer's value and seller's cost is less than the tax per unit. This one will be true because this between 28 and 20, that's the statements over here, the difference between the buyer value and seller's cost, that is less than how much our tax is, right? So tax is what, $16, and that value is only about $8. So that this statement is true. Now for next one, for 20th unit, the difference between buyer's value and seller's cost is greater than the tax per unit. That is false. And then for the 20th unit, the difference between buyer's value and seller's cost is equal to the tax per unit. That is also false. And last one, it makes sense for the buyer to buy and seller to sell the 20th unit with or without tax. That is false too, because this only makes sense when there is no tax. But when you have a tax, you wouldn't sell anymore, or you wouldn't buy anymore. So this transaction is gone. That's part of deadweight loss. Okay. All right. So next question, same graph over here. So difference between A and B representing our tax in the market. So as a result, okay, we're gonna do a lot of numbers here. So what we can do, we can find out what is the consumer surplus and a producer surplus and total economic surplus, both before and after tax. Okay, so let's do first with no tax. Now with no tax, your price will be settled at $24. That's our equilibrium price. So first, with no tax, your consumer surplus. That will be the triangle on top. So let me use a highlighter. So consumer surplus will be this much. That's your consumer surplus. Okay. So CS, and then your producer surplus will be the triangle below. That's your producer surplus. This is PS. So this is when the price is settled at $24. So let's find out how much this is. So for consumer surplus, the vertical difference will be from 44 to 24. That's your vertical difference. And the horizontal difference is 25 divided by 2. This one should be 250, right? More or less. Okay. And then producer surplus will be the triangle below. So the difference between 24 to 4. This will be 24 times the horizontal difference of 25 divided by 2. That is also 250. And then your total surplus. Your total surplus is all together. So 250 plus 250. That will equal to 500. Okay, so that is what happens when you have no tax. Now, when you have a tax, this will all change. So with a tax, buyer pays $32. So buyer consumer surplus will be the little triangle on top. That's your consumer surplus, and then the producer surplus will be the little triangle at the bottom. And then your tax revenue will be this. This is your tax revenue. So this is given to the government. And then all three of this together, that is your total surplus. And then the little triangle at the end, that's called the deadweight loss because we don't have them anymore. Okay. So again, just look for the areas again. So more math and calculations. So consumer surplus, this will be from 44 to 32. And then horizontal difference is 15, so times 15 divided by 2. So this would be so 8 divided by 2, 4 times 15, 60. That's your consumer surplus. And then producer surplus, this one will be from 16 to 4. Oh, did I do this right? I did it wrong. It's not 60. So 44 minus 32 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 6 times 15, that's 90. Okay, and then next one, 16 minus 4 times 15 divided by 2. This will also be 90. And then your tax revenue. Tax revenue, this will be from 32 to 16 times 15. Now do not divide it by 2 because this is a rectangle, not a triangle. Okay, so 16 times 15 to let me use the calculator. 16 times 15, they're much easier. 240. And our total surplus is all three together. So 90 plus 90 plus 240. This should be 90 plus 90 plus 240, and that's a 420. And then the little triangle here, our deadweight loss. So for the deadweight loss, let's find out how much this is. So there are two ways to do it. You can use our old total surplus minus the new total surplus, and that difference will give you your deadweight loss, or just find a triangle here, the little red triangle. Okay, so that will be 32 minus 16 times, so the horizontal difference would be from 15 to 25, so times 10 divided by 2. So that should be 80, right? So 16, yeah, 80. That's our deadweight loss. All right, so the first one says consumer surplus decreased from 200 to 80. That is wrong because it decreased from 250 to 90. So it's not 200 to 80, so that's wrong. Answer B says producer surplus decreased from 200 to 145. That is also wrong This is from 250 to 92. The next market experiences a deadweight loss of 80, which is 80. That is right. So the only good answer is C. Okay. All right. Next question. So same question. Before the tax is imposed, the equilibrium price is what? So before tax is imposed, this is the price over here. So $24. That's our equilibrium price. And then quantity go down. That'll be $25, 25 quantity. That is before the tax is imposed. But once tax is imposed, you're gonna have a buyer price of 32 and then seller price of 16, and then your quantity will be settled at 15 because the quantity will be over here. Okay, 15 units. Okay, and the next, which of following statements summarize the incidence of tax? So incidence of tax, if you go through definition, this is just how much tax each party pays. So how much tax does the buyer pay? How much tax does the seller pay? So A says for each unit of good that is sold, buyer bear 1/2 of the tax burden, seller bear 1/2 tax burden. All right, so to find the tax burden on the graph over here, now first before you do the graph, your buyer tax. So tax on buyer, this equals to the buyer price minus the equilibrium price, and then the tax on seller, this equals to the equilibrium price minus the seller price. All right, so right here is our buyer price. So price for buyer. Right here is our seller price. And over here is our equilibrium price. So your buyer tax will be the little rectangle on top. So this little area here, that is how much tax our buyer will pay. And then your seller tax will be this over here. Okay, so for buyer tax, this would be $32 minus $24. So that's an $8 tax for buyer. And then for sellers, this would be $24 minus $16. That's also $8 tax. So both parties pays the same amount of tax. So 1/2 a buyer, 1/2 a seller, and that's why A is right. Okay. And then for B says 1/3 for buyer, 2/3 for seller. That is wrong. C says 1/4, 3/4 is also wrong. And then D says those are just all wrong. Okay, so only A is right. So this tax in this market is pay 50/50. So buyer pays half, $8, and then seller pays half, $8. All right, and then next one. So the deadweight loss is associated with this taxes amount to how much? So as we found out before, this little triangle here, that is our deadweight loss. So base times height divided by 2, the answer is 80. So C and D are wrong, and then so B, let's look at A. Let's see how wrong A is. So A says 80. So this part is good, and this figure represents the amount by which tax revenue to the government exceed the combined losses of consumer surplus and producer surplus. So so this statement is false because when you have a deadweight loss, the tax revenue to the government will be less than the loss of consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Now we can see on the graph over here. Okay, so so when you impose a tax on this market, so price goes up for buyers and then price goes down for sellers. So if you look at how much buyers lose, buyers are losing this little area on top. That's how much buyer losses. But seller losses the little area below. So that's how much seller loses. Now, however, part of it is given to the government as a tax revenue. So part of it is recovered by the government. So government will recover this area here. That's the government tax revenue. But the little triangle at the end, this is not recovered at all, right? So that's the deadweight loss. So that's why your government tax revenue, how much you recover is less than the losses between consumer surplus and producer surplus. So that's why A is wrong. All right. B says this figure represents the surplus that is lost because tax discourage mutually advantage trade between buyers and sellers. This would be a good statement because this part over here is basically just definition for deadweight loss. That when you have a deadweight loss, that means you're gonna lose some transaction that could happen in the economy, but wouldn't happen anymore because you have a tax in the system. So remember for the previous example we did for the 20th unit, right? So for the 20th unit, you're gonna have somebody who want to pay, let's say $28. That's his WTP, and a seller's cost is only 20. So in a normal transaction, this will happen. This is a good transaction. But because you have a tax increase price buyer pays, decrease the price seller receive, so they wouldn't happen anymore, right? So this would discourage discourage buyer and sellers from engaging mutually beneficial trade. All right, and the last one. Okay, so this stuff we did before. So as a result of tax, consumer surplus decreased by how much? So let's go back to the number we had before. All right, so before tax, our consumer surplus is 250. With tax, consumer surplus is 90. So it looks like our consumer surplus went down by 160, right? So that should be the answer. So one down by 160. So that is wrong, that is wrong, that is wrong. Only this one is right. Okay. All right, guys. So that's it for chapter 8. Have any question, let me know. Okay. Good luck. Bye-bye.